Grand Theft Auto has given us some of the most memorable villains in gaming history. Psychopaths, mob bosses, corrupt cops, billionaires who'd sell you out for a stock bump. But what's wild is how these antagonists evolved over 2 decades, from unhinged chaos to something way more terrifying. So let's break down every major GTA villain, starting with the one who connected 2 games and 2 doomed protagonists, Catalina. Most GTA villains show up, ruin your life, and die in the same game. Catalina does it across 2. She is one of the only antagonists in the entire franchise whose arc spans multiple titles, connecting 2 different protagonists, 2 different timelines, and 2 very different flavors of chaos. And honestly, she might be the most unhinged character Rockstar has ever written. Let's start in 1992. In GTA San Andreas, Catalina is operating as a volatile rural bandit out in Red County. She partners up with CJ for a string of armed robberies, and by partners up, I mean she oscillates between wanting to kill him, wanting to sleep with him, wanting to kill him again, and occasionally robbing a gas station somewhere in between. Her interactions with CJ are genuinely unhinged. We're talking affection, sexual aggression, blind rage, and total contempt, sometimes within the span of a single mission. She is officially described as psychotic, self-centered, hot-headed, destructive, and reckless, which is, not ideal in a business partner, but here's where it gets interesting. Catalina eventually ditches CJ, leaves him for a guy named Claude. If you've played GTA 3, that name should ring a bell because Claude is the silent protagonist of that entire game, and the reason Claude spends all of GTA 3 on a revenge mission, Catalina. She betrays him during a bank robbery in the opening cutscene, shoots him, and leaves him for dead. So she abandons CJ for Claude, and then abandons Claude with a bullet. Consistency is not her strong suit. By the time GTA 3 rolls around, set roughly a decade later, Catalina has somehow risen to become the leader of the Colombian cartel in Liberty City. The games never explain how she made that jump. One minute she's knocking over rural businesses in Flannel Country, the next she's running a transnational drug operation. I don't know what to tell you. Rockstar just decided she leveled up off-screen and expected nobody to ask questions. Her death is exactly what you'd expect. In the final mission, The Exchange, Claude tracks her down, and she attempts to escape in a helicopter. Claude destroys it. Fiery explosion. The whole thing mirrors her entire personality, loud, destructive, and completely self-inflicted. She built her empire on betrayal and chaos, and that's exactly how it ended. Here's the thing about Catalina, though. She's pure chaotic energy. There's zero long-term strategy, zero institutional power. She's just a wrecking ball with ambition and a short fuse. And that makes her the perfect starting point for this video because every antagonist that follows represents something bigger, something more calculated, something more systemic. Catalina is the baseline. Raw, volatile, personal villainy, but if you think an unhinged bandit turned cartel boss is dangerous, wait until you meet the old-school mob patriarch who destroyed a man's entire life and then had the audacity to ask for a cut. Sonny Forelli. Most GTA villains show up, cause problems, and die. Sonny Forelli ruined Tommy Vercetti's life 15 years before the game even starts. That's a different level of evil. Here's the thing. In 1971, Sonny sent Tommy on a hit in Harwood. Walk in, kill one guy, walk out. But Tommy walked into an ambush. Instead of one target, there were 11 men waiting for him. And Tommy, being Tommy, killed every single one of them. 11 bodies. One night. That's how he earned the nickname the Harwood Butcher, and that's how he earned 15 years in prison. But here's where it gets dark. That job was never supposed to go well. Sonny set the whole thing up deliberately. Tommy was too dangerous, too good at what he did. Rather than risk having an uncontrollable killer in his organization, Sonny designed a scenario where Tommy would either die or end up behind bars forever. Either outcome worked. The fact that Tommy survived and massacred everyone was probably the worst possible result, but 15 years in prison still gets the job done. Sonny reshaped another human being's entire existence for the sake of organizational convenience. That's not a mob boss throwing his weight around, that's a puppet master treating someone's life like a spreadsheet. Vice City picks up in 1986, and Sonny sends Tommy down to Florida to oversee a cocaine deal. On the surface, it looks like a second chance, but Sonny is treating Tommy as both an indebted servant and an expendable asset. He doesn't care if Tommy succeeds. He cares if Tommy sends money back to Liberty City. When the deal gets ambushed and the drugs and cash vanish, Sonny doesn't believe Tommy's story. He starts calling, pressuring, demanding repayment, growing increasingly paranoid that Tommy is building his own operation, which to be fair is exactly what Tommy ends up doing. But Sonny's suspicion isn't based on evidence. It's based on the fact that he knows what Tommy is capable of, because he's the one who created the monster in the first place. The final mission, Keep Your Friends Close, is one of the best confrontations in the entire series. Sonny shows up at Tommy's mansion with armed Forelli soldiers and drops the bombshell. He admits to lying about Tommy's past. The Harwood job, the setup, all of it. Everything Tommy went through was by design. Tommy kills him in a shootout inside the mansion. Every Forelli soldier goes down. And just like that, Tommy severs his ties to the family and claims Vice City as his own. What makes Sonny work as a villain is what he represents. Old school East Coast mafia trying to capitalize on the 1980s cocaine boom through centralized control, loyalty through debt, power through hierarchy. His death symbolizes the collapse of that model. Tommy doesn't replace him with another boss. He becomes his own thing entirely. The Forelli family loses their grip, and the old guard crumbles. Some people consider Sonny the overarching antagonist of the entire 3D universe because of how far his influence reaches. Catalina was chaotic and unpredictable, but Sonny was calculated. He played a 15-year chess game with another man's life and still lost. But if you think a mob boss pulling strings from Liberty City is bad, wait until you hear about the betrayal that came from inside your own crew. Big Smoke. Big Smoke is the greatest betrayal in GTA history, and it's not even close. Not because his scheme was the most elaborate, or because his criminal empire was the most powerful, though it absolutely was. It's because you genuinely liked him. You spent hours running missions with this man, you laughed with him, you thought he was your friend. And that's exactly what makes Melvin Big Smoke Harris so devastating. When CJ returns to Los Santos in 1992, Smoke is right there from the start. A high-ranking member of the Grove Street families, larger than life in every sense. The man's got this massive frame, a black bowler hat, square black glasses, and a green button-down repping Grove Street colors. He looks like somebody's fun uncle who just happens to be in a gang. He's loud, he's funny, and he seems completely, unconditionally loyal. Then there's the drive-through order. You know the one. 2 number 9s, a number 9 large, a number 6 with extra dip, a number 7, 2 number 45s, 1 with cheese, and a large soda. This moment became one of the most enduring memes in gaming history. Players quote it from memory 2 decades later. And here's the thing. That same character, the one who made you genuinely laugh ordering enough fast food to feed a small army, was secretly selling out his entire neighborhood the whole time. Smoke had defected to the Ballas, he'd been making deals with the Los Santos Vagos and the Russian mafia behind everyone's back, quietly building a massive drug empire while pretending to be CJ's ride or die. By the end of the game, he'd become the most powerful crook in the entire criminal underworld of Los Santos. From loyal friend to the neighborhood's single greatest threat. Cool. That's also a thing that happened. The final mission, End of the Line, forces you to confront everything Smoke became. CJ fights through 3 full floors of Smoke's fortified crack fortress, room after room of armed guards, before reaching the 4th floor penthouse where Smoke is holed up. The man built himself a literal castle out of the drug money he made destroying his own community, but the most gut-wrenching part isn't the gunfight, it's the conversation. When CJ finally reaches him, Smoke doesn't launch into some supervillain monologue about world domination. He expresses regret. He knows what he did, but then he says, the line that defines his entire arc, he just wanted to be a player. That's it, that's the whole reason. He saw an opportunity to have money, power, and influence, and he took it, even though it meant betraying every single person who ever cared about him. Fan rankings consistently place Big Smoke as the 2nd greatest GTA antagonist of all time, right behind Officer Tenpenny. And honestly, you could argue he's more emotionally impactful. Tenpenny is terrifying because he represents a corrupt system, but Smoke is terrifying because he was your friend, and you didn't see it coming. The system corrupted him, sure. But he also chose to let it. That's what separates a good villain from an unforgettable one. You don't mourn a villain you always hated, you mourn the one you used to trust, but if Smoke's betrayal hit you in the gut, wait until you meet the guy who turned backstabbing into a full-time career across all of Liberty City, Dmitry Rascalov. Every GTA antagonist before Dmitry Rascalov had a limit. Catalina was impulsive, Sonny was possessive, Tenpenny was corrupt, but Dmitry doesn't have a flaw that drives his villainy. He has a philosophy. Every single person in his life is a tool, and every tool gets discarded the moment it stops being useful. Here's the thing about Dmitry. When you first meet him in GTA 4, he seems like the good guy. Mikhail Faustin, his longtime partner and fellow Russian immigrant, is volatile, paranoid, and increasingly dangerous. Faustin threatens people for no reason, makes reckless decisions that put their entire operation at risk. And Dmitry is the calm one, the reasonable one. The guy pulling Nico aside saying, hey listen, I'm sorry about him, he's out of control, let me handle this, and you believe him. That's the worst part, because what Dmitry is actually doing is building a case. He's positioning himself as the rational alternative so that when the time comes, he can convince Nico to kill his own partner. His longtime friend, the man he immigrated to Liberty City with, built a criminal empire with. Dmitry looks at all of that shared history and goes, yeah, but he's inconvenient now. So he gets someone else to do the killing, keeps his hands clean, and waits for the body to drop. And then, immediately, he betrays Nico too. Not a week later. Immediately. Nico walks into what he thinks is a payment meeting and finds Ray Bulgarin waiting for him, courtesy of Dimitri, who sold him out without blinking. The guy who just asked you to murder his best friend has now handed you over to die, which is, not ideal. This is what separates Dimitri from every other GTA villain. Catalina betrayed Claude once. Tenpenny's corruption had consistent internal logic. Dimitri betrays everyone constantly as a default setting. Faustine, betrayed. Nico, betrayed. Bulgarin, double-crossed. Jimmy Pecorino, exploited and backstabbed. If Dimitri shook your hand, you should start writing your will with the other one. The Pecorino situation is especially cold. Jimmy Pecorino is a struggling mob boss who desperately wants respect in Liberty City's underworld. Dimitri sees that desperation and plays it perfectly, collaborating on heroin deals while simultaneously working behind his back. He doesn't even need to betray Pecorino for survival. He does it because squeezing one more advantage out of a dying alliance is just reflexive at that point. Oh, there's a person trusting me. Better fix that. And Rockstar makes an incredible narrative statement with his ending. In both of GTA 4's final paths, Deal and Revenge, Dimitri dies. There is no timeline where this man survives. The game is literally telling you that serial betrayal is structurally unsustainable. You can burn every bridge in Liberty City, but eventually you run out of ground to stand on. Thematically, Dimitri represents the evolution of GTA villainy into something coldly transactional. He's not acting out of rage like Catalina, or greed like Sonny, or systemic power like Tenpenny. He's acting out of pure calculated self-interest with zero emotional attachment to any human being on Earth. Every relationship is an equation, and the moment someone's value drops below their risk, they get removed from the spreadsheet. He consistently ranks in the top 3 GTA antagonists alongside Tenpenny and Big Smoke, and honestly, it's earned. He's the villain who makes you complicit in your own betrayal. He doesn't ambush you. He asks nicely, waits for you to do exactly what he wants, and then stabs you in the back while thanking you for your service. But if Dimitri represents the coldest version of criminal betrayal, wait until you meet the guy who does the same thing from a penthouse with a stock portfolio and a private military company on speed dial. Devin Weston. Every GTA villain up to this point has had one thing in common. They get their hands dirty. Catalina pulls the trigger herself, Sonny storms the mansion, Smoke hides behind walls of crack and bodyguards, but he's still in the building. Tenpenny drives the fire truck, Dimitri double-crosses people face to face. Devin Weston never touches anything, and that's exactly what makes him terrifying. On the surface, Devin looks like the golden ticket. He's an influential billionaire running multiple enterprises across Los Santos, and when he first approaches Michael, Franklin, and Trevor, he presents himself as the employer who's going to make them all legitimately rich. High-risk heists, massive payoffs, connections to people who actually matter. For Franklin especially, this feels like the exit ramp from street-level hustle into real money. The kind of opportunity you don't say no to. Here's the thing, Devin never had any intention of paying them, not once. He withholds payment after completed jobs, dismisses the protagonists as expendable assets the moment they stop being useful, and treats every interaction like a transaction where only his side of the ledger matters. He's not a crime boss. He's a CEO who happens to have people killed. And the way he does it is what separates him from every villain before him. Devin doesn't hire goons from the neighborhood, he contracts Merryweather, a full-blown private military company, to handle his problems. We're talking trained operators with military hardware, not some guys with pistols in an alley. When he decides the protagonists need to die, he doesn't send a threatening phone call, he sends a private army, which is, not ideal, but the truly insidious part of Devin's villainy isn't the violence he outsources, it's the manipulation. And when things start falling apart, he goes directly to Franklin and pressures him into choosing between Michael and Trevor. Kill one of your friends, or I'll destroy all of you. He's not just trying to eliminate threats, he's trying to weaponize personal relationships, turning the protagonists against each other because that's cheaper and cleaner than sending another Merryweather squad. Hey Franklin, do my dirty work for me so I don't have to spend another dime. Classic billionaire move. This is where GTA 5 does something genuinely clever with its villain design. Every previous antagonist in the series represented some version of the criminal underworld. Mob bosses, corrupt cops, gang leaders, backstabbing partners. Devin Weston is none of those things. He's a boardroom predator, he operates through shell companies, legal intimidation, and contracted military force. He never raises his voice because he doesn't need to. The system is built to protect people like him and he knows it. Franklin's entire arc with Devin is basically a lesson in realizing that the upper echelons of power are just as predatory as the gangs he left behind. Possibly more so, because at least gang leaders are honest about what they are. And then there's the ending. In the canonical conclusion, The Third Way, Franklin refuses to betray either of his partners. Instead, the three protagonists go after every single person who's been pulling their strings. Trevor personally kidnaps Devin Weston, not sends someone, not hires a contractor. Trevor Phillips walks up and grabs this man himself. They stuff him in the trunk of his own car, drive it to the edge of a cliff overlooking the ocean, and push it off. Three guys who were supposed to be disposable contractors killing the billionaire who tried to throw them away. It's poetic, it's cathartic, and it's easily one of the most satisfying villain deaths in the entire franchise because Devin spent the whole game acting like he was untouchable, and then he very much got touched by a cliff at terminal velocity. But if Devin represents the private sector of GTA 5's power structure, his government counterpart is somehow even worse. Steve Haynes. If Frank Tenpenny is the corrupt cop who operates in the shadows, Steve Haynes is the corrupt Fed who operates on camera. And that distinction matters more than you think. Haynes is an FIB agent in GTA 5, which is Rockstar's version of the FBI. He's a central character throughout the entire story, and the secondary antagonist of the game, depending on who you ask. Because here's the thing about Haynes, he doesn't look like a villain, he looks like a hero. That's the entire point. This man has his own reality television show. He literally appears on a cable program where he plays up his role as a fearless federal agent protecting America from threats, while behind the scenes, he's coercing three criminals into doing his dirty work through blackmail, intimidation, and the full weight of the federal government. He kidnaps people, he orders torture, he sends Michael, Franklin, and Trevor on armed assaults against government and corporate targets, and then he goes back on TV and talks about how great the FIB is, which is, not ideal. The way Haynes operates is through exploiting the rivalry between the FIB and the IAA, GTA's version of the CIA. He uses that institutional turf war as justification for escalating operations, each one more reckless and dangerous than the last, while conveniently burying any evidence of his own corruption under layers of national security classifications. Every mission he assigns the protagonist serves exactly one person, Steve Haynes. National security is just the branding, and that's what makes him such a sharp piece of satire. Tenpenny abused his badge on the streets of Los Santos. Haynes does the same thing but packages it as patriotism and puts it on prime time. He's the evolution of the corrupt authority figure for the social media age, a guy who understands that in modern America the narrative is the power. Control the story, control everything. He doesn't hide from cameras. He runs toward them, but Haynes doesn't operate alone. His partnership with Devin Weston is one of the most important dynamics in GTA 5 because together they complete Rockstar's thesis about Los Santos. Haynes represents state power. Weston represents private capital, and the two of them work hand in hand coordinating operations that serve both their interests, while everyone beneath them gets used up and thrown away. Government and corporate corruption aren't separate problems in GTA 5, they're the same problem wearing two different suits. When the final choice rolls around, Haynes is the one pressuring Franklin to kill Trevor. Option A, the FIB wants loose ends eliminated, and Trevor is the loosest end in the history of loose ends. Trevor is unpredictable, violent, and knows way too much about what Haynes has been doing. From the FIB's perspective, he needs to disappear. Haynes frames it as necessary, clean, professional, just business. But in the canonical ending, The Third Way, Franklin rejects that logic entirely. He refuses to kill either Michael or Trevor, and instead the three of them go after everyone who's been pulling their strings, Haynes included. And here's where it gets poetic. Steve Haynes, the man who built his entire career on public spectacle and media performance, gets shot and killed at Del Perro Pier during a public event. His carefully constructed TV persona, the patriotic hero defending America from danger, destroyed in an instant at the exact kind of spectacle he spent the whole game cultivating. He didn't die in a dark alley or a classified black site. He died on camera, the one place he always wanted to be. Fans debate constantly whether Haynes or Weston should be considered GTA 5's primary antagonist. Weston has the money and the Merryweather contracts. Haynes has the federal authority and the operational control. Honestly, the answer is both. They're two halves of the same corrupt machine, and trying to separate them misses the point entirely. But if you think Haynes perfected the corrupt authority figure archetype, you need to meet the man who invented it. The original dirty cop who started it all, Officer Frank Tenpenny. Every villain on this list has one thing in common. They're criminals. Catalina runs a cartel. Sonny runs a family. Smoke runs a crack empire. Dimitri runs a betrayal factory. Devin and Haynes run their respective corners of corporate and federal corruption. But Frank Tenpenny, he runs the law. And that's what makes him the most terrifying antagonist Rockstar has ever created. Tenpenny is the primary antagonist of GTA San Andreas, voiced by Samuel L. Jackson, and from the moment CJ steps off the plane in Los Santos in 1992, this man owns him. Not through muscle, not through money, through a badge. In the opening sequence, Tenpenny and his unit intercept CJ, confiscate his cash, and frame him for murder using fabricated evidence. Within 10 minutes, you're not fighting gangsters. You're fighting the police, and the police have already won. Here's where it gets really uncomfortable. Rockstar didn't invent this character. They pulled him directly from the LAPD Rampart scandal. Officers in the anti-gang unit CRASH were caught planting evidence, brutalizing suspects, and running criminal operations behind their badges. Tenpenny's unit is modeled directly on this same name, same tactics, same rot. The only difference is that Tenpenny is a video game character and the real officers were doing this to actual people. That's what separates him from everyone else on this list. Sonny can threaten you, but he has to hide from the cops to do it. Dimitri can betray you, but he's one bad day from a prison cell. Tenpenny can arrest you, frame you, or kill you, and then file a report calling it justified. He is the system. Every mission he forces CJ into, every life he destroys, it all happens with the full machinery of law enforcement backing him up. He doesn't operate outside the law. He weaponizes it. His villainy isn't personal, it's structural. Big Smoke betrayed his friends for money. That's personal failing. Tenpenny uses an entire institution as his criminal empire. He doesn't need to pull the trigger when he can coerce a kid from Grove Street into doing it under threat of life imprisonment. That's not just a bad cop, that's systemic corruption wearing a uniform and daring you to do something about it, and his death is thematically perfect. In the final mission, after CJ takes down Big Smoke's crack fortress, Tenpenny attempts to flee in a stolen fire truck. CJ chases him through the city, and ultimately, Tenpenny loses control. The truck crashes off an overpass and lands right near Grove Street. He dies in the very neighborhood he spent years terrorizing. But here's the thing. CJ doesn't execute him. The system didn't punish him either. He died because his own reckless escape collapsed under its own weight, which is, not ideal for him, but pretty poetic for everyone else. Fan rankings consistently place Tenpenny at the top. Community lists, forum debates, it doesn't matter where you look. He's the consensus greatest antagonist in GTA history. He's not a crime lord hiding in a penthouse. He's the guy who shows up at your door with a warrant he wrote himself. Every antagonist on this list evolved what a GTA villain could be. Catalina brought chaos. Sonny brought the old guard. Smoke brought betrayal. Dimitri brought cold calculation. Devin and Haynes brought institutional power. But Tenpenny brought all of it, wrapped it in a badge, and made you realize the scariest villain isn't the one breaking the law. It's the one enforcing it. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.